Some things don't leave you, no matter how far you've come or how many battles you've survived. I've seen men die in the desert. I've held brothers in my arms as they bled out. But what I saw that day, in the woods, that still wakes me up at night. Name's Tom Keller. Folks back home still call me General, but I've been out of uniform for 15 years now. I'm 59. Live in a small cabin about 20 minutes outside of Helena, Montana. Just me, the dog, and the wind most days. Served 26 years in the United States Army. Infantry first, then command. Retired with stars on my shoulders and a back that lets me know every time snow's comin'. I've seen a lot. Some of it I talk about. Most of it I don't. When I stepped away from the military, I thought I'd feel free. I really did. But turns out, freedom ain't always quiet. Sometimes it's just a different kind of noise. The kind that lives in your own damn head. You don't just shut off that part of yourself. Discipline, control, eyes always scanning, mind always calculating. I'd wake up at 500 every morning for years after retiring, even though there wasn't a single soul telling me I had to. Just how I'm wired. At first, I tried to blend into civilian life, went to a few community events, did some volunteer work, even got asked to run for office once. Turned that down real quick. I don't do speeches, not the kind that get clapped at anyway. Eventually, I found a sort of rhythm. Mornings with black coffee and the smell of pine. Long walks into the hills behind the house. Even started doing trail hikes again. Nothing fancy, just enough to stretch the legs and feel human. I liked being alone out there. In the woods, I didn't have to explain myself. Nature don't care about medals or scars. I kept to myself mostly. My ex-wife, Sarah, and I split up about 2 years after I retired. No bad blood, just she'd spent too many years married to a man who wasn't really home, even when he was. Our daughter lives down in Bozeman, teaches high school history. We talk once a week. She checks in on me more than she should. Sweet girl. There's a saying folks use up here in Montana. You ain't lost, you're just out of sight. That felt true for me. After everything I'd done, everything I'd seen, I didn't feel lost. But I sure wasn't looking to be found, either. Still, there were days I'd stare out past the trees and wonder, what now? What's left for a man like me when the war's over, the uniform's in a box, and your name's just another one they read at some Veterans Day lunch? You see, I didn't miss the fighting. I missed the clarity. When you're in it, when lives are on the line, there ain't room for doubt. There's a mission. There's purpose. Out here, things get quiet. Too quiet sometimes. That's why I hiked. Not for exercise. Not for the views. I hiked because walking gave me something to do with the thoughts, with the ghosts. I'd pack light. Compass, knife, jerky, water, first aid, 300 feet 7 in the belt, just in case. You never know out there. Bears, mostly. Wolves. Once saw a cougar track that made the hair stand on my neck. But honestly, none of that scared me. Not the way people do. That's something I learned in war. Nature has a kind of honesty. It doesn't lie to you. Doesn't pretend. A bear'll kill you because it's hungry or scared. A man'll do it for a flag, or a god, or a paycheck. Anyway, that's where I was, mentally and physically, back in the fall of 2010. 44 years old. Retired, but not really at peace. Strong, yeah, still ran 5 miles a day, but tired in a way that had nothing to do with muscles or bones. I hadn't spoken to anyone in person for 3 days straight. I'd been on a solo trip near Glacier National. Just me, my ruck, and the trees. I remember the smell of the air. Cold, dry, clean, leaves crunching under my boots like broken glass. The kind of silence that makes you feel like the only man left on earth. I remember thinking, clear as day, that I liked it that way, that people were noise, that solitude was peace. But I was wrong. What happened next? It made me question a lot of things. Not just about people, but about the things we don't talk about. Things we don't admit we saw. Things we maybe weren't meant to see. And that's why I'm here now. Took me 15 years to talk about it. I've written parts of it down, burned them after. Told myself it was just a dream, or stress, or some leftover survival instinct trying to play tricks. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. And maybe telling it now will help me sleep a little better. Or maybe it won't. Back in 2010, I'd been out of the Army for just over 2 years. And let me tell you, retirement sounds good on paper. Especially when you've spent most of your adult life running operations, living on adrenaline, and trying to keep young men alive in places most people can't pronounce. But nobody tells you what to do when the mission ends. See, the thing about the Army is, it gives you structure. Every damn second of your day has a reason. You eat when it's time to eat. You move when it's time to move. And you don't ask questions unless they matter. Then, one day, it's gone. You wake up in a quiet house. No radios, no boots stomping, no orders, just stillness. Some guys love that. I didn't. I'd spent most of my years commanding troops, but I was always a field guy at heart. I wasn't built for golf courses or Sunday brunches. The idea of spending retirement at barbecues and fishing tournaments, hell, I'd rather get kicked again in the chest by a mule. So I built myself a routine. Wake up before sunrise, black coffee, no sugar, stretch. Clean the house, even if it didn't need cleaning. Keep the tools sharp. Load and unload the truck just to check inventory. Every task had a purpose, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. I didn't do well around people. I wasn't mean or anything. Just didn't see the point in small talk. I'd sit in diners, hear folks complaining about their slow internet, or how their neighbor parked too close, and I'd think, you have no idea how lucky you are. It's not their fault. I get it. They weren't in Fallujah. They didn't watch kids walk into markets and never come back out. But still, it made me feel like a ghost sitting at the table. Like I was in a world I didn't really belong to anymore. That's when I started hiking more. Montana's got this way of reminding you how small you are. Mountains that look like they've been here since the beginning of time. Trees so tall they swallow the sun. Rivers that talk back if you listen close enough. I'd load up and take off for 2, 3 days. No GPS, just a topo map, a compass, and my gut. I'd go deep, off-trail, places where even the bears think twice before settling. It wasn't about survival. It was about silence. I needed that. Out there, I didn't hear gunshots in my head. Didn't see the faces. Didn't replay the orders I gave that cost people their lives. I just existed. Some nights, I'd make camp near a ridge and watch the stars. Clearer than any satellite image. I'd stare up and think, how the hell did I make it this far? Not just the war, but life itself. So many buddies buried young. So many widows. And here I was, sitting by a fire, trying to remember what normal felt like. I kept a journal, but never wrote about combat. Just notes about the trail, tracks I'd found, weather, how many paces it took from one ridge to the next, that kind of stuff. One entry I remember just said, Day 3, no sound. Felt peace for 6 minutes straight. That was a record back then. 6 minutes without thinking about war, without feeling like a failure, without wondering if retirement meant I had any use left. I wasn't looking for meaning. I wasn't trying to heal. I just wanted to breathe without weight on my chest. Fall in Montana's a tricky time. Weather changes fast. One day, you're sweating. Next, you're breaking ice to get water. But I liked it. Liked the challenge. Liked knowing the land could kill you if you weren't paying attention. People talk about freedom like it's some fancy idea. To me, freedom was being able to sleep without boots on. Not having to worry if someone was digging under the wire while you tried to close your eyes. I was 44, strong as ever. My knees barked a little in the cold, but I could still carry a full ruck uphill without losing breath. I kept the 357 on me, but not out of fear, just habit. You don't walk into the woods thinking nothing's gonna happen. That's how people end up stories on the 6 o'clock news. So yeah, that was my life. A retired general sleeping in tents, eating out of Ziploc bags, talking to trees like they could answer back. Some folks thought I'd gone off the rails. Maybe I had. But I felt more in control out there than I ever did sitting in my living room, staring at a wall, wondering if I should call someone or just shut the blinds and wait for the day to end. There's a line I heard once, maybe in a book, maybe from a chaplain, that stuck with me. Some men come home, but they never arrive. That was me. I'd left the battlefield, sure, but the battlefield hadn't left me. And I think, deep down, that's why I kept going into the woods. Not to find peace, but to prove to myself that I could still fight if I had to. That if something came for me out there, bear, storm, whatever, I wouldn't freeze. I'd still move, still think, still survive. Funny thing is, that trip in 2010, I wasn't looking for anyone. I wasn't trying to help nobody. Wasn't out to be a hero. I was just trying to disappear for a few days. Let the world spin without me. But sometimes the world don't give a damn about your plans. Sometimes it finds you anyway. It was early October. I remember that real clear, 'cause the leaves had just started to turn that deep yellow up in Glacier, and the air had that dry, sharp smell like snow was coming, even if it was still weeks out. The kind of morning where your breath fogs just enough to remind you winter's waiting around the bend. I'd parked the truck about 5 miles south of Bowman Lake. Left a note on the dash like I always did. Just a habit. Solo hike. 3 days. Back Thursday. Name and phone number. Not that anyone ever checked, but in the Army, you learn real quick not to leave loose ends. First mile or two was quiet. Just me and the trees. Boots crunching on frosted trail. Sun creeping through the branches like it didn't want to wake the forest. I had a good pace going. Mind was clear. No memories sneaking up. No heart racing. Just walking. I was about 4 miles in when I noticed something was off. Animals were quiet. Now, you spend enough time in the woods, you learn the rhythm of it. Squirrels chasing, birds chattering, branches snapping. But that day, nothing. Not a damn sound. Like the whole place was holding its breath. My gut tightened. Same feeling I used to get in country before things went sideways. I slowed down, checked my surroundings. No fresh tracks, no movement in the brush. Just stillness. That's when I smelled it. Not real strong. Faint but sharp. Like rot. Mixed with wet fur. Could have been a dead animal nearby. Maybe something that didn't survive the cold snap. Or maybe something else. I took the safety off my revolver. Just in case. About 10 minutes later, I saw him. Young guy, maybe early 20s. Jeans, flannel, no real gear on him except a small pack and a busted water bottle hanging from the side. He looked out of place, pale, shaken. He was standing halfway down a slope, hands on his knees like he'd just run a mile flat out. Didn't even hear me approach. I called out, "You good?" He spun around so fast he almost lost his footing. Eyes wide, real wide, like panic wide. Kid looked at me like I wasn't real. I got closer, told him to sit, asked if he was hurt. He said nothing, just shook his head, chest heaving like he'd seen a ghost. I figured maybe he'd gotten turned around. Happens. Tourists think they're invincible. Come out here with trail maps from gas stations and no idea what real wilderness is like. Then he whispered something, so quiet I almost missed it. Bear. That one word. But the way he said it, it wasn't just fear. It was like his soul had left his body. I started looking around. The terrain was steep, rocky. Not ideal bear country, but not impossible either. Grizzlies will go where they want. I asked if he'd been chased. He nodded, barely. I asked where it went. That's when we heard it. Not a roar, not a growl. Just brush moving. Heavy. Deliberate. I turned fast. Weapon up. Eyes scanning. And then I saw it. Coming out from between two pines. Huge. Easily 700 pounds. Big shoulders, thick fur matted with mud. Grizzly. Full grown. Too close. Way too close. Kid froze. I stepped in front of him out of instinct. Now, I've faced men with rifles. I've stood in open ground with mortars landing. But that bear, that thing made me feel small. Real small. I shouted, waved my arms, tried to look big. That's what they teach you. But this bear didn't flinch. It stepped closer. And I saw its eyes. They weren't wild. They weren't confused. They were focused. Like it knew what it was doing. Like it wasn't just acting on instinct. I can't explain it. But something about the way it moved. It wasn't right. I fired once in the air. Didn't matter. It charged. Time slowed. That part I remember clear. Sound of paws hitting ground. Kid behind me yelling something. I aimed for the snout and fired twice more. First shot hit the dirt. Second clipped its shoulder. That was enough. Not to stop it, but to shift its path. It veered off just a little, crashed through a dead log, and disappeared back into the brush. Silence again. I turned. Kid was on the ground, cut on his leg, probably from earlier, face white as snow. I crouched beside him, asked if he could walk. He nodded, barely. So I hoisted him up, arm over my shoulder, and started back toward the trailhead. Whole way back, I kept my hand on my weapon, kept listening. But the bear didn't come back. Still, I felt eyes on me, like we weren't alone, like something was watching every step. Took us 4 hours to get back to the truck. Got him into the passenger seat, gave him water, checked the cut. Told him I'd take him to the clinic in town. He hadn't said a word since the attack. Then, just before we hit the main road, he finally spoke. "Did you see it?" he asked. I said, "The bear?" He shook his head. "No, its face. Did you see its eyes?" I didn't answer, 'cause I had. And what I saw still don't make sense. When that bear charged, everything in me snapped into gear. Not panic, not fear. Training. Pure survival mode. The kind of instinct you don't learn in books. You earn it. Through sweat and blood and too many close calls in places where you don't get second chances. I didn't even feel my feet move. Just reacted. I stepped in front of the kid like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't have time to scream, didn't even flinch. Froze up, locked solid. I've seen that before, in combat, in ambushes. Some folks freeze, others run. He froze. That bear. I still remember the way it came in low, almost silent. For something that size, the quiet was wrong. It should have sounded like a bulldozer, but it didn't. Just a thud, 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 like a big heartbeat in the dirt. I raised the .357, aimed center mass. The first shot hit somewhere wide. I wasn't used to shooting at something moving that fast. Second shot clipped it high on the shoulder, and thank God it did. That sound, when it howled, wasn't natural. I've heard bears roar before. This wasn't that. It was deeper, angrier, like it wasn't just hurt. It was mad, mad at me, like it knew I wasn't supposed to be there. When it veered off, it didn't run. It crashed into a log, stopped, and turned back for just a second. And that's when I saw its face, its eyes. They didn't look like a wild animal's. Not just rage, not just fear. There was something in them. Recognition, maybe. I know that sounds nuts, but I swear, those eyes weren't empty. They were focused, like it had thoughts, like it chose not to finish us. It left, but I didn't feel safe. Not for a second. I turned to the kid. He was on the ground, breathing hard, pale. There was blood on his leg, seeping through the fabric. He must have gotten sliced earlier, maybe when he was running. I crouched, looked him in the eye. "You hurt? Anywhere else?" I asked. He just shook his head. "You can walk?" I think so," he said. Voice weak, shaky. I got him up, put his arm over my shoulder, kept my other hand on my weapon. I told him we were going to move slow and quiet. No noise, no talking, just walk. Every step back felt like a mile. I kept glancing behind us, waiting for that thing to return. But the woods stayed silent. Too silent. I've been in ambushes where the air gets thick with tension, like the whole world's holding its breath. That's what it felt like the whole walk back. Like the forest was watching. Every crunch of our boots on leaves made me flinch. Every squirrel rustling in the trees sounded like claws. But we kept moving. I kept talking to the kid, quietly. Kept him awake. Asked him his name, where he was from, how he ended up out here. He said his name was Jason, 23, college dropout. Said he came out to Montana looking for something. Peace, maybe, or answers. He didn't say much more, but there was one thing he kept mumbling, almost like a prayer. It wasn't just a bear. It wasn't just a bear. I didn't push him. Truth was, I wasn't so sure myself. We stopped twice to rest. His leg was getting worse. I made a tourniquet from a spare sock and a belt. Not ideal, but it kept the blood in. At one point, he looked at me and asked, "You believe in things? Stuff that ain't explainable?" I said, "I believe in what I see. And even that don't always make sense." He nodded, looked away, didn't ask again. We finally reached the truck just before sundown. My hands were shaken by then, not from fear, but from holding it all in. When you're in charge, you can't let panic in. Not even a crack. You keep it together, or people die. I helped him into the passenger seat, gave him the last of my water. He looked like hell. I probably did too. That drive back, I didn't speak, just kept one hand on the wheel and one on my sidearm. I kept expecting to see that bear in the road, or in the rear view. But the woods stayed behind us. We got to the clinic in Polebridge just after dark. Place was nearly empty. I helped him in, told the nurse he'd had a run-in with wildlife. No need to say more. They patched him up. Said he was lucky. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. After they took him in, I went back to the truck and just sat there. For a long time. No radio, no movement. Just me and the dark. I've seen a lot of ugly things. War does that to you. Makes you numb to pain, to blood. But what I saw that day, what I felt, was different. There was something wrong with that animal. And I ain't talking biology. I'm talking intent. I've looked evil in the eye before. That bear, I ain't sure it was just an animal. It wasn't the blood. Wasn't the bear. Wasn't even the look in that thing's eyes. What stuck with me, what haunts me to this day, was the moment in the truck when that kid, Jason, looked at me dead on and asked, "Did you see its face?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. But inside, my gut turned. 'Cause, yeah, I saw it. I've seen a lot of death. Seen men blown apart. Seen eyes roll back and souls leave bodies. But that bear, when I looked at it, it looked back. Not in a wild way, not like an animal trying to size you up. It looked like it knew me. Like it had a reason. Jason looked down when I didn't respond. Real slow. Like he already knew the answer. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, "It didn't want me. It wanted you." Now, I didn't know how to take that. I'd spent the last 4 hours keeping him alive, dragging him out of that forest with a busted leg, and whatever the hell just happened behind us. I thought maybe he was delirious, or just trying to make sense of something his brain couldn't wrap itself around. But the way he said it, calm, flat, like it was fact, that rattled me. I asked him, "Why would it want me?" He just shrugged. I don't think it was a bear. There was a silence after that, not just between us, but around us. Like the air in the truck got heavier. Then he looked right at me again, and I swear, I ain't never forget the look in his eyes. He wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He looked resigned. Like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. Like whatever happened out there, whatever that thing was, it changed something in him. Broke something. Or maybe woke something. And here's the part that really shook me. He said, "When I ran, I thought I was going to die. I felt it behind me. It was in my head. Not just behind me. Inside me." I said, "That's the fear talking." He shook his head. "No, sir. It was telling me things." That's when I lost it a little. I told him to stop talking like that. Told him he was in shock, that his mind was trying to process trauma, and that's how it comes out sometimes. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. I've been through enough to know when a man's lying. And that kid wasn't lying. He believed what he was saying. Maybe that's what scared me the most. After I dropped him at the clinic, I waited outside in the truck for over an hour. Thought maybe a ranger would show up. Maybe someone from Fish and Game. I half expected black SUVs to roll in like you see in the movies. But nothing happened. The next morning, I went back to check on him. They said he'd left. Didn't check out, didn't sign a form. Just gone. No forwarding number. No family contact. Just a note on the pillow in the room that said, "Tell him I'm sorry, but it's not over." That hit me in the chest like a brick. Not over? What the hell does that mean? I drove straight back to where it happened, parked in the same spot, took the same trail, alone. It was quiet again, but not the peaceful kind. The woods felt wrong. I found the log where the bear veered off, still splintered, still had some blood on it. I followed the broken brush about 50 yards before I stopped. I couldn't go farther. Not 'cause I was scared. Not exactly. It was like the air itself didn't want me there. Like every tree was leaning in, listening. I turned around, and for a split second, I thought I saw something between the trees. Not a bear, not a man, just movement. But when I looked again, it was gone. I hiked out fast, got in the truck, and drove straight home. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep the next either. I kept replaying that moment in the truck. The kid's voice. That question. Did you see its face? Yeah, I saw it. I saw more than I wanted to. I saw something that didn't belong in this world. And the worst part is, it saw me too. After that day, I didn't go back into the woods for a while. Not a week. Not a month. A full year. That might not sound like much to most folks, but for me, that was like shutting off the only valve I had left to let the pressure out. The woods were where I breathed, where I leveled out, where I kept the memories at arm's length. But after what happened with Jason, I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at the tree line behind my cabin, all I saw were those eyes, that charge, that damn silence that felt like it was watching me. For the first few weeks after the incident, I stayed busy. Organized gear, cleaned every tool I owned, sharpened knives I didn't plan on using, rearranged the shed 3 times, cooked meals, and didn't eat 'em. I tried calling the clinic in Polebridge to follow up on the kid. They didn't have much to say, just that he walked out sometime after midnight. Said he left a note. Nurse didn't even remember his last name. I asked if anyone came looking for him. They said no. No family. No friends. Just a name, Jason. That didn't sit right with me. So I drove out to Kalispell, checked around local shelters, posted a couple flyers in coffee shops and bars, just missing hiker, Jason, seen in Glacier area. Picture I printed from a trail camera, still I'd gotten lucky with that day, before the incident. It was blurry, but it was him. Nobody responded. Nobody'd seen him. I went back to the park ranger station, asked if there'd been any other bear attacks reported. They looked at me like I was asking about UFOs. Said there were no grizzly incidents that week. No sightings. Nothing. That really threw me. I know what I saw. That thing was real. You don't fake blood on your boots. You don't hallucinate a 700-pound animal with a shoulder wound. But there was no report. No investigation. Not even a call in their logs about a man being treated for a bear-related injury. I sat in my truck outside the station for a long time, just trying to make sense of it. Part of me started second-guessing everything. Was I wrong? Did I overreact? Was Jason even real? But then I'd look down at my boots, still stained, still cracked in spots from running on rock and shale with a man half my weight leaning on me, bleeding. That was real. The fear in his voice? Real. The question he asked me? Did you see its face? I'll never forget that. I started writing about it. Thought maybe if I got it down, it'd stop spinning in my head. But every time I tried, I'd get about halfway through a page and tear it out. Burned a whole stack of them one night after a bottle of Jack, and 3 hours of just sitting in the dark. I couldn't say the words out loud, not even to my daughter. She called that week, checking in like always, asked how my hike went. I told her it was fine. Weather turned early, cut it short. She said I sounded tired. I told her I was. That was the truth. More tired than I'd ever been. Not from the hike, not from the fear, from the weight, the not knowing, the not understanding, from carrying that moment alone. There's a thing about combat vets they don't talk about much. We learn to live with ghosts. Sometimes they're people. Sometimes they're just moments that won't let go. This one was both. I kept expecting Jason to show back up, knock on my door, call out from the tree line, maybe leave a note on my truck. But he never did. I even went through the Glacier Trail Registry archives, just looking for his name. Any sign he'd hiked there before. Nothing. Like he just showed up. And then vanished. A part of me started wondering if he wasn't sent there. Not by someone, but by whatever that thing was. I started dreaming about it. Always the same scene. Me standing in the woods, gun up, Jason behind me, the bear coming out of the trees. But in the dream, I don't fire. I freeze. Just stand there. And that thing walks right past me, doesn't even look my way, goes straight to Jason. And he doesn't run. He just lets it happen. Then I wake up, cold, shaken, heart pounding. I haven't had combat dreams in years. But this is different. This ain't about guilt. It's about unfinished business. I've tried to explain it to myself 100 different ways. Stress, PTSD, some freak wildlife encounter. But none of that fits. There was intent that day, and I think, somehow, I interrupted it. Stopped something I wasn't supposed to stop. But if that's true, then what comes next? I never told anyone the full story. Not the park rangers, not my daughter, not the VA therapist I saw once a year just to check a box. Didn't talk about the kid, didn't talk about the bear, and I damn sure didn't talk about what I saw in its eyes. I kept it locked up, deep, like a file in a drawer marked, "Do not open." But that kind of silence, it's not neutral. It doesn't just sit there. It grows, pushes, sinks into your bones like cold. Most days, I managed fine, chopped wood, took care of the place, went into town for supplies, nodded to folks who didn't ask questions. But some nights, when the wind came down from the mountains and rattled the windows, I'd just sit in my chair, grip in the arms like I was holding on to reality. I didn't see the bear anymore. I saw him, Jason, in dreams, in flashes, in that same flannel shirt, jeans torn at the knee, eyes full of something I still can't name. He wasn't scared anymore in those dreams. He looked hollow. Sometimes he'd say nothing, just stare. Other times he'd whisper, "It's still out there." And I'd wake up drenched, fists clenched, chest tight like I'd run 10 miles uphill. After the first year, I went back to Glacier once, just to see if I could. Didn't even make it halfway down the trail before I turned back. Not 'cause I was scared of another attack. 'Cause the silence was back. That same silence from that day. The one that don't feel natural. No birds, no wind, like the forest knew me and didn't want me there. I kept trying to convince myself it was just trauma. I mean, hell, I've dealt with that plenty. Seen men fall apart from less. But this wasn't flashbacks, wasn't adrenaline. It was like a presence. Like something still had eyes on me. And I started changing because of it. Pulled back from people more. Took longer to answer calls. Told my daughter I was just tired or dealing with back pain whenever she wanted to visit. Truth was, I didn't want anyone near me. What if it came back? What if whatever I interrupted that day hadn't forgotten? I started checking locks more. Installed cameras on the porch, pointed toward the woods. Left a shotgun by the bed. Friends, what few I had, figured I was just being a cautious old vet. Montana's full of us. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know I was watching the tree line every morning, waiting for eyes I couldn't see. Then there was the sound. Started about 2 years after. Just every now and then. In the middle of the night. Like a low growl under the wind. Sometimes it'd wake the dog. Sometimes just me. Wasn't loud. Wasn't even clear. But it was there. And always the same direction. From the woods out back. I'd go out with the spotlight. Check the perimeter. Find nothing. No tracks. No broken branches. Just that same silence. I thought maybe I was losing it. Thought maybe whatever I'd seen had cracked something in me I didn't know could break. But then, one night, I found a mark on the tree closest to the back porch. A deep gouge. 3 claw marks. Fresh. Clean. Higher than any black bear could reach. Too wide to be a cougar. I didn't sleep at all that night. Sat in the kitchen with the shotgun across my lap until dawn. And still, I didn't tell a soul. Why? Because no one would believe me. Because I didn't want them to. If they believed me, then it'd be real. More real than it already felt. And I couldn't live with that. Couldn't live knowing I'd brought this thing into someone else's life. So I kept it buried. But it buried me, too. Little by little, year after year. It changed how I saw things, how I trusted people, how I trusted myself. Started second-guessing my instincts. Started wondering if maybe that day in the woods wasn't about Jason at all. Maybe it was about me. Maybe it still is. There's this thing no one tells you about when you carry a secret like that. It don't stay quiet forever. It leaks. In your voice. In your eyes. In the way your hand trembles just a little more than it used to. Folks notice, even if they don't say nothing. And deep down, I think they know. Maybe not the details, but they can feel the shadow of it. And that's the hardest part. Living with something you can't name. Something that stares back at you when you look in the mirror. Not fear, not guilt, just knowing. You spend enough years in the service, you get real good at compartmentalizing. You learn how to box things up tight and shove them into the back of your mind where they can't get out and mess with the mission. Thing is, I ain't been on a mission in a long time. And those boxes, they don't stay sealed forever. What happened out there, whatever that was, it left something in me I can't shake. Not a fear, not even a memory, exactly. More like a shift, a fracture, quiet and deep. It changed how I look at the world. Used to think I had it all figured out. War strips you down to basics. Eat, sleep, survive, protect your own. The rest is just noise. But that day in the woods, it pulled the rug out from under all that. It reminded me there's still things out there we don't understand. Things that don't fit in boxes. Things that don't play by the rules we were taught. And if I'm being real honest, that rattled me more than anything I saw overseas. 'Cause in war, you're fighting men. You're fighting ideologies. You can wrap your head around that, even when it's ugly. But this felt like something older. Like it didn't care what uniform you wore, how many stripes you had, or where you were from. It just was. I still go back to Jason's words. The way he said, "It didn't want me. It wanted you." At the time, I thought it was nonsense. Just shock talk. But I've turned that sentence over in my head more times than I can count. Why me? Why that day? What did I interrupt? And why, all these years later, do I still feel like I'm being watched? I've tried to live normal since then. Tried to keep a routine. Chores, hikes, short ones now, some days at the VFW, just to hear voices that understand the kind of quiet that follows combat. But even around other vets, I feel separate. 'Cause most of us come home with ghosts that wear dog tags. Mine doesn't. And I think that's why I've stayed quiet all these years. It ain't shame. It's not even pride. It's that I don't know how to explain it. How do you tell someone you looked into the eyes of something that shouldn't exist? How do you put words to the feeling that maybe, just maybe, you weren't meant to walk away? There were nights, especially in the first few years, when I'd wake up and go stand on the porch with my rifle. Just listening. Not for footsteps, for silence. That same silence. I'd stare into the trees and wonder, is it out there, still waiting? Or did it move on to somebody else? And worse, what if I was just one of many? What if there's other folks walking around with their own version of this story, and none of us are talking? That thought scares me more than anything, because maybe it ain't about one event. Maybe it's about not facing it, not warning others. But I've kept my mouth shut. Maybe out of fear I'd sound crazy. Maybe 'cause I figured no one would believe a retired general talking about some bear with eyes that looked too human. But mostly, I think I kept quiet 'cause saying it out loud would make it real again. Would make me have to feel what I felt in that moment, when I pulled the trigger and realized it didn't matter. That thing wasn't afraid of me, wasn't even angry. It just saw me, and that stuck with me in a way I can't shake. Even now, 15 years later, I still hesitate when I walk into the woods alone. Still glance over my shoulder a little too often. Still scan the tree line before I let the dog out at night. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And even if nobody else ever believes me, I've come to a point where I don't need 'em to. 'Cause the truth ain't a democracy. It don't need votes. It just is. And whether it was a bear or something else, that truth is mine to carry. I didn't come here looking for attention. Truth is, I've avoided this kind of thing my whole life. Cameras, microphones, interviews. They're not for guys like me. I'm a boots-on-the-ground type. Get in, do the job, get out. But there comes a time, especially as you get older, when keeping things locked up just don't work no more. You can only carry so much before your back gives out. Or your mind does. And I guess this story's the one I never put down. The one I couldn't. Not because it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. It wasn't. I've seen men die. I've watched good soldiers fall apart in ways you don't come back from. But this one stuck different. Because I couldn't explain it. Because it didn't follow the rules. Because deep down, I think it was never supposed to happen the way it did. And for 15 years, I've kept that to myself. Told no one. Not even the people closest to me. Carried it like a stone in my gut, hoping time would wear it down. But time don't do that. Not with this kind of weight. It just pushes it deeper. So I'm saying it now, not for sympathy, not for shock value, but for you. Whoever you are, sitting on the other side of this screen. Maybe you've seen something you can't explain. Maybe you've felt something in your gut that no one else could feel. Maybe you've carried something for years, afraid people would laugh or walk away if you ever said it out loud. I'm telling you now, you ain't alone. I've led men through war zones. I've buried friends. I've held my breath waiting for news that never came. But nothing weighed on me like that day in Glacier. Not just the bear. Not just the kid. But the feeling that we weren't supposed to be there. That maybe some things out in this world ain't meant to be seen by us. And when we see 'em, something changes. Maybe in the world. Maybe just in us. I don't know. All I know is, it never left me. and maybe it never will. But telling this, it helps. Even if no one believes me, even if folks think I'm just some tired old man making up stories in the woods, that's fine, because it's real to me. And maybe that's the point. We carry these stories not to prove something, but to keep from drowning in them. So if you've got one, if there's a moment in your life that never sat right, something you saw or felt or barely escaped, talk about it. Say it out loud. Write it down. Heck, leave it in the comments if that's all you got. Just don't keep it inside forever. It eats at you, turns you into someone you don't recognize. Trust me. I know. I used to think strength was about keeping it all in, about carrying more than the next guy without ever flinching. But real strength? It's telling the truth. Even when it don't make sense. Even when you're afraid of what folks might say. So here's my truth. My name is General Thomas Keller. I'm 59 years old. And 15 years ago, I saw something in the woods that changed my life. I don't know what it was, but I know it saw me. And if you've ever felt something like that, you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're just human. And that's enough.